So when we're thinking about ourselves and the things we're saying to ourselves, think about how this works out in an ethical plane. It's a little tougher, if you ask me. Right? Because when we're talking about ethics, we're really talking about our perceptions of the other person most often. Right? Our call is to elicit the best of others, right? And thereby in ourselves. Our call is to engage and to be creative and to find the things that answer people's needs and interests and help them really grow in that way. And if our first thing is one of entitlement, which is we're going to focus first on our needs, and once my needs are met, I might have something left for you, that puts a bit of a challenge into it on that end. But go the other way. What if we're always looking outward, thinking that we need to really sacrifice our needs to answer the needs of others first? Right? That our effort is really to just find some kind of way to really not feel so bad about ourselves by helping other people out. Really relieve the guilt and shame and get some sense that we are really not just stuck on ourselves, but we're helping others as well. That has its own pitfalls. Right? And yet it probably works. In fact, the first way probably works for people as well. So our challenge, I see it, is to us to get some handle on how we each work. Right? What happens for you? Do you work from a sense of entitlement where you're clear and confident and able to go forward and have a sense of, things are going pretty well for me and I can pay attention to the needs of others and go do this successfully? Or are you someone who kind of has to suffer along and it's more the threat of the self-punitive measures that get you reaching out to other people? In either event, you might actually have a rather nice influence on the people around you. It might not be so bad. When they've done studies, they do find that different people respond differently to different expectations. I don't know if people saw the Pink Panther and the Commissioner Dreyfus gets all bent out of shape over Inspector Clouseau's antics, and he's getting more and more stressed. And I guess it's probably one of the later ones where he's coming back from rehab or something. And he has this mantra that he says. People remember it? Every day, in every way, I'm getting better and better. And he says that to himself over and over again. And as things get more and more out of control, he's saying it with more and more passion and distress. Well, funny, they've done some studies for this, just to see, because, the self-talk movement certainly has kind of taken on some strength in the past decade or so. And they find that for people who don't honestly have a pleasant self-perception, that kind of self-talk tends to work in reverse, right? If they keep trying to convince themselves that they're looking and feeling better, you look in the mirror and say, I'm great underneath, At the end of the day, they wind up getting more depressed and more distressed and sometimes suicidal for all that. If it's not real for you, it's probably not going to be a good idea to be pressing in this way. However, if it is kind of consistent with the way you see yourself anyway, it can be a way to kind of boost your energy up and make you go the extra mile. You got to know who you are and how you function in order for it to work. But we are culture bound. Right? It's no surprise to me that the person that I first talked to grew up during the Depression. A much different time than the time that I grew up in, and certainly a different time than the time our children are growing up in. And it makes sense that the kind of self-perception and ways that one would talk to oneself growing up in an environment of scarcity, of sudden turnarounds, would be much less confident than what you might experience with someone where in the last 20 years, there's this growing sense that, if you want something, you can probably get it. The cost of things are coming down, people are designing new things, there's all kinds of wild stuff you can get, and if you're interested in consuming, you really have lots of good opportunities here. Not a bad strategy. But we need to figure out who we are. Now here's the point that I thought was most telling from, one of the most, it's a good book, read Outliers, I think you'll enjoy it. But But he noted that one of the biggest difference for people who performed well compared to people who didn't perform so well was the amount of time they spent practicing and the level of determination they had to solve problems that came up while they were underway. And he is inclined to say it takes about 10,000 hours of focus activity on something to really become a master. And if you look at the people who are at the top of their class in any particular field, whether it's hockey or computing, singing, whatever, chances are you can look back to their life and find that they probably devoted a good 10,000 hours worth of effort towards becoming excellent in that field. Now, that's a lot of time. A lot of time indeed. And it takes special breaks often to be able to spend that kind of time. It also takes a kind of confidence that it's worthwhile, right? And we kind of undercut that confidence often by focusing more on the special attributes of the people who are at the top, and maybe not focusing quite enough on the amount of time and energy they put into be developing themselves towards that specialness. But the other thing we often don't do is really note that people, if they work on a problem long enough, chances are pretty good that they'll find some solutions to it. Now, this is especially true in mathematics. Anyone familiar with Pons Asinorum? Pons Asinorum, it's a Latin term. It's used in mathematics really talking about there's kind of this bridge of asses. And it means there's like this one place where many people falter. And if they don't get it, they're not really able to move into higher mathematics. Right. Now, I know about this because I was on the losing end of the Pons Asinorum, and wound up really struggling my way through high school mathematics. Well, it turns out that mathematics is one of those things that is very dependent on the level of effort and determination that people put into it. And that oftentimes people will get cowed because they notice some people get things really quickly, and they move right along. And actually our education system is kind of developed that way, right? We do lots of problems in quick repetition and make that kind of the way to go. But what they find is in cultures that are more successful, oftentimes they let people work on problems for long periods of time. There's a school actually in the Bronx, the KIPP school, and these children actually have a daily class schedule that goes from 7 to 5, Monday through Friday, and then is it 8 to 2 or something like that on Saturdays, and they have 3 weeks of school in the summer. And when they come home, they usually have several hours worth of homework. And so it's very, very intensive in terms of the amount of time people spend. But when you get into the classrooms are not pressurized in terms of getting people to do things quickly. They're pressurized in terms of helping people learn to do things well. And so one child may be up front looking at a complicated math problem for quite a while, talking about it, and other class members might offer some suggestions, the teacher might offer some suggestion, but they're given the time to keep working at it. Right? Because when people have the confidence that they can get it if they work harder at it, that will help them sustain themselves through the extra hours that they would need to really become truly proficient.